I'm going to chant the first chant, honoring the Buddha, and the second, the Three Refuges. If you know them, I would love for you to join me. If not, that's just fine. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sambuddhassa. Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami, Sangham saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhammam saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Sangham saranam gacchami, Tatiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami, Tatiyampi Dhammam saranam gacchami, Tatiyampi Sangham saranam gacchami. Those of you who are in the community know that I've been having a little bit of a rough time lately. And when things are rough, I find that I do want to go back to the Three Refuges. I love going back to the basics. One of my favorite things about the Dharma is the way that you can step in at any point. There's not really a beginning of learning and an end of learning, but just sort of a circle that you can always come back into. And just spend a little bit of time with the refuges. So the first refuge is the Buddha. So Buddham saranam gacchami. I go to the Buddha for refuge. And the key thing about the Buddha philosophically is that the Buddha was first and foremost a person. He was also, as that chant says, a lucky person and a generous person. So if we start with the regular person part, perhaps apocryphally, but certainly traditionally, the Buddha was a prince, sort of like the son of a regional warlord, living a very nice life of a rich person inside the palace walls, and then one day asks to travel outside and goes out into the city and sees an old person, a sick person, and then a dead person, and has this realization that although he's been living this peaceful life inside the palace, old age, sickness, and death are realities, and they're terrifying. And he's motivated to find a way to transcend or escape suffering, old age, sickness, and death. And the Buddha tries every form of asceticism available at that time. The stories are very extreme, living on 1 grain of rice a day. And in a moment when he is near to death, starving and exhausted, he realizes none of this has gotten him any closer to freedom. And so as the story goes, the Buddha sits down under the Bodhi tree, being with what is, watching what's here, and committing to stay and watch until he figures it out. The realization he has is the realization that we work with here every week. This is the way it is. He realizes, I cannot escape the fact that this is the way things are. And also, so much of my suffering has come from wanting it to be different than how it actually is. It's not in my control the way that it is, but I may be able to disentangle myself from the wanting it to be different that causes me so much suffering. And this is basically the three noble truths right there in a realization. And what knocks me out about this is that if you've been sitting, you can relate to that experience. You have sat, you have watched, you have had moments of saying, oh, this is what it's like. And also of noticing how much you're wanting it to be different is causing you suffering. The Buddha didn't do anything you haven't done. And that's consoling. Because we're not talking about somebody who was magic, right? The chant, Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa, says, let's bow to the Buddha who practiced with dedication, got lucky, and got enlightened all on his own. A combination of dedication and straight up luck led him to the noble truths of suffering and desire. And we honor him particularly because he figured it out on his own and then taught it to the rest of us. According to the Atayana Sutta, directly after his enlightenment, the Buddha's first instinct is to go and share this exciting news with everybody else. And then the sutta says, then the Buddha reflected thus. The Dhamma, and when I say Dhamma, I mean the same as when we say Dharma, right? Dhamma in Pali, the language that the Buddha spoke, Dharma in Sanskrit. The Dhamma that I have attained is deep, hard to see, hard to realize, refined, beyond the scope of conjecture, and subtle. And if I were to teach the Dhamma and others would not understand me, that would be tiresome for me, troublesome for me, right? And then the sutta says, out of compassion for beings, he surveyed the world with the eye of the awakened one. As he did so, he saw beings with little dust in their eyes and those with much, much more dust in their eyes. And the Buddha thinks, okay, well, then maybe some of them will get it. And there he decides to teach. And it was troublesome for him, tiresome for him. All of this, from the realization outside the palace gates to teaching this is going to suck, is so relatable, and that is what makes it, for me at least, a refuge. Yes, the Dhamma is deep, hard to see, hard to realize, beyond the scope of conjecture, and subtle. And yes, following the path of the Dhamma can be tiresome, troublesome for students and teachers alike. But people can get it. I take refuge in the fact that a person can do this. I take refuge in the Buddha. Buddham saranam gacchami. The second refuge is the Dhamma itself. And that word has a lot of meanings. Somebody was really thoughtful and was like, what are you talking about when you say Dhamma? The last time I was teaching, which reminded me that to talk about what these things mean. The word has a lot of meanings. Sometimes it means the instructions and teachings of the Buddha. Sometimes it just means like the truth. And mainly it means things the way they actually are, what actually is. And this is the refuge that I really need when I'm really suffering. Again and again, I can always come back to what is here and what is its nature. What is actually here and what is it actually like. There is nothing that this cannot be applied to. And sometimes I'm not ready. Sometimes it's too scary to admit that this is how things actually are. And sometimes I have ignorance in the way. I haven't seen clearly yet how things actually are. And sometimes I have delusion, which is I think I see things as they are, but I haven't really done my work of noticing what's here and what it's like, the work of noticing and naming enough to see how things actually are. But as an orientation, it is so freeing. No matter what I'm facing, no matter what I'm dealing with, the answer is the same. What is true? What is actually here? What is this actually like? In my own life, being able to come back to this is the truest refuge I have experienced. It never fails me, so I never doubt it. And even though when I started this path, my eyes were so caked with dust that I didn't even know what seeing was, I could still sense enough of the truth and importance of it to keep at it. And even though both the study and the practice are tiresome for me, troublesome for me, the experience of this refuge fuels my practice because I've sat long enough to know that if I sit long enough, truths reveal themselves. And very often they're ones I would not have found any other way. The truth of how things actually are is not always pleasant. The original insight of the Dhamma for the Buddha was old age, suffering, sickness, and death. But it is always freeing. And when I take my problems to my spiritual friends, my Kalyanamitta, other people on the path, we sit together and we help each other see things as they actually are. We take refuge in the Dhamma together. I take refuge in the Dhamma. Dhammam saranam gacchami. And then finally, the third refuge, the Sangha, the community. One way to think about the Sangha is to think of the thousands and thousands of people across human history who have sat. Some of us with more dust in our eyes, some with less, but uncountable people have tried, century over century, to get freedom, even though the way is deep, hard to see, hard to realize, beyond the scope of conjecture and subtle. Even though the practice is tiresome for us, troublesome for us. For 2,000 years, people mentioned the teachings, or people memorized the teachings because they couldn't write them down. And just like the Buddha, in a moment of compassion, each one of those people said, I'm going to try to remember this and I'm going to try to impart it. Innumerable unnamed people had to say, I'm going to devote myself to passing this on to the next person in order for us all to be sitting here. And whenever I think of that, I get such a sense of awe and absurd gratitude because these ideas have had such a real impact on my life. And I only get them because of the care of people like thousands of years ago. And all of them are the Sangha. And so are we. Earlier this week, I was riding my bike up Baltimore Ave, and I saw Nellie, who's a person who I don't think is here today, but is here often. And I had that experience where you don't know where you know the person from or really who they are. But like my heart knew her before my mind did as I was riding by. And the And it wasn't like I thought, oh wait, who is that? Before I even could think, my feeling was, oh, that person and I belong together. I had it again when I saw Danya, just like walking over here today, that feeling where I catch one of you out in the neighborhood, out in the world, and I'm like, oh, we go together in a way. And then later, I realized who it was. And that was such an amazing feeling. And when I was sick last week, you all offered me metta. And some of you texted me or you emailed me to say, may you be free from suffering. And this isn't a group of sunsets and rainbows, kind of like spiritual bypass people, right? This is a room full of real ass people who largely do not fuck around. And that makes getting metta from you so special to me. Like, based on what I know about this room, your metta never feels like pity or lip service. It feels like being folded back into the reality of suffering and held there by people who really know what suffering is. And that feeling is not really describable, and it's definitely not replaceable. Sangha, the way that we are a Sangha, is the hardest thing for me to take refuge in. I am not very trusting of people. It's easy for me to get caught up in my social awkwardness and kind of like miss things. Trying to be a person, it's like troublesome for me, tiresome for me. But week after week, month after month, we come back here and we try to get at something deep, hard to see, hard to realize, beyond the scope of conjecture and subtle. And we fail so much. And it's funny. Like, even if you and I have never spoken, or if you don't like to hang out afterwards and do our awkward idle chatter and tea, and even if you're not sure about this whole thing, like, altogether, I still feel like there's a way that we belong to each other. My brain might not always get that, because it might be too caught in anxiety, but my heart does. And I know that all the people in all the countries across the centuries probably failed just as much as we do. And they kept trying. And they passed it on. And we belong to them too. So I take refuge in the Sangha. Sangham Saranam Gacchami. So with that, I'd like to chant the refuges one more time, and we'll just sit a little. Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami, Sangham saranam gacchami. Dudiyampi Bhutam Saranam Gacchami. Dudiyampi Dhammam Saranam Gacchami. Dudiyampi Sangham Saranam Gacchami. Tadiyampi Bhutam Saranam Gacchami. Tadiyampi Dhammam Saranam Gacchami. Tadiyampi Sangham Saranam Gacchami.